it's very, very bad for both of them. Meghan, who was screamed, don't leave me, don't leave me. And Harry, who actually has leaned on his mother-in-law to be helpful emotionally to him.
For years, she told the world she was shaped by one mother, one bond, one origin story.
The relationship between them now.
Yet quiet records, sealed files, and one eerie DNA coincidence suggest there may have been another child before her.
I would argue it's probably not good.
A daughter no one was supposed to know about. And that silence changes everything.
So we've known for some time that things aren't great between Meghan Markle and her own mother, Doria Ragland.
Think about it. Meghan's entire public persona, from Oprah to Netflix to her speeches about heritage, rests on a single story.
She has been completely miserable in the last couple of public appearances that the fake Duchess forced on her.
Biracial daughter of a strong, single mother in Los Angeles. A woman who beat the odds, taught kindness, and stood by her through royal chaos. It's inspiring, yes, but it's also rehearsed.
She married said influential man, joined the British royal family.
Each time Meghan tells it, tiny details shift. Sometimes Thomas Markle is a loving father, sometimes he's invisible, sometimes she studied international relations. Sometimes the degree seems to vanish. The narrative bends like glass, polished until the cracks disappear. Except now, those cracks are starting to spread. The first fracture came during Meghan's 2021 podcast, when she proudly announced her DNA test showed she was 43% Nigerian. She called Doria to share the news. Her mother paused. Not seconds, but long enough for Meghan to describe it as a silence that filled the moment.
But it was probably during Meghan Markle's interview with Tina Knowles where it became clear just how tense relations are between mother and daughter.
Listeners thought it was emotion. But what if it wasn't? What if that pause was recognition? Because years before Meghan, another woman told the exact same story. Georgina Lawton, a British writer, wrote in her memoir, Raceless, that she too took a DNA test. She too was 43% Nigerian. She too called her mother, who froze in silence before carefully answering. Same percentage, same pause, same reaction. Published in 2020, her book was covered by The Guardian, celebrated as a profound exploration of identity. And yet, a year later, Meghan was repeating those details almost word for word. Coincidence? Inspiration? Or something deeper? This is where Doria Ragland enters the shadows. Sources whisper that her court filings in Riverside, California, sealed to this day, line up with years where her presence in Meghan's life is hard to trace, the missing years that no one can fully explain. Fans online have speculated that this isn't just about low-profile living. It might be about another life, another child, kept apart. And that makes Meghan's only daughter story not just fragile, but dangerous. Because if the foundation of her identity is incomplete, then everything built on top of it, the royal titles, the Hollywood reinventions, the Netflix deals, begins to look unstable. And that's why this story refuses to die. It's not just about Meghan, it's about the pause, the silence, the missing years, and about whether the woman the world knows as the Duchess of Sussex has been standing on a truth that was never whole. When Meghan landed in Nigeria for what was branded her homecoming, it should have been a triumphant moment. This was the Duchess embracing her roots, celebrating her identity, and silencing critics with cultural pride. Instead, the trip became a stage for suspicion, because the very claim that brought her there, the 43% DNA revelation, was suddenly under scrutiny in real time. Fans online began pointing out an uncomfortable detail. DNA results aren't fragile paper certificates. They're digital, instant, accessible on any device. And yet, when officials reportedly asked Meghan to show the test, she allegedly told them she didn't have it with her. According to reports, Nigerian representatives even offered to verify her ancestry through their own genealogy systems. Sources claim she declined. The refusal wasn't just odd, it was explosive.
But now it has emerged that the strain is so bad that Doria Ragland has said enough is enough. I'm moving out of Montecito for good.
Within hours, hashtags like hashtag show the test and hashtag 43%gate began trending across Twitter and TikTok. Memes of empty phone screens and buffering DNA reports filled comment sections, mocking the Duchess for what many saw as a performance without proof. Commentators compared the moment to past celebrity missteps, Some recalled Elizabeth Holmes, the Silicon Valley founder whose tech claims collapsed under requests for evidence. Others pointed to cultural appropriation scandals where stars tried to borrow identity for branding. Meghan's trip was supposed to be personal, but fans speculated it felt scripted, like an extension of her Netflix narrative. And once the crowd online turned, every detail became ammunition. Her fashion choices were dissected, her speeches clipped into memes, even Nigeria's First Lady's remarks about cultural modesty were framed by users as veiled criticism directed at Meghan. The glow of a heritage celebration dimmed under the heat of public doubt. Meanwhile, industry insiders began to worry. A media analyst told The Telegraph that Meghan's branding had always leaned on authenticity, a woman who lived her truth, however controversial. If the Nigeria trip eroded that authenticity, it put her entire media value at risk. After all, Netflix had banked tens of millions on a duchess who could sell identity as empowerment. If fans now suspected parts of that identity were borrowed or exaggerated, what did that mean for future projects? Reports suggested executives were quietly monitoring the fallout, nervous that another Sussex-style embarrassment could tank future deals. The public wasn't finished either. Bloggers resurfaced Georgina Lawton's book Raceless, posting side-by-side comparisons between her story and Meghan's words. Clips from Meghan's podcast were edited next to Georgina's interviews, showing the near-identical phrasing. Fans on Reddit speculated about whether Meghan had read the book, pointing to publishing insiders who claimed it circulated among her team. And the whispers began to grow louder. Was Meghan repeating someone else's life story as her own? This wasn't just gossip anymore. It was turning into a cultural question.
Even her own mother got so sick of her constant moaning and drama she had to flee the luxury home.
How much of identity can be curated and how much must be provable? Meghan's pause-filled calls with her mother had been touching when first told, but under the shadow of another woman's near-identical story, they now felt like a script. And the world was demanding to know who wrote it. The deeper you dig into Meghan's story, the more one name keeps resurfacing: Doria Ragland. To the public, she's the quiet, dignified mother who walked her daughter down the aisle and stood gracefully at royal ceremonies. But to those who've studied the paper trail, she's also a woman with missing years, gaps that no official biography can fully explain. Reports point to 2 court filings under Doria's name in Riverside, California, during Meghan's childhood. What those cases were about remains sealed. Even now, decades later, the files have never been fully opened to public record. For years, fans dismissed it as mundane, maybe financial disputes, maybe simple paperwork. But with whispers of a possible hidden daughter, those sealed pages take on a different weight. Commentators online speculated, were those filings connected to custody, adoption, or something even more personal? Without access, it's impossible to know, but the coincidence is impossible to ignore. Then there's the geography. Sources claim Doria spent extended time away from Los Angeles during Meghan's early years, living quietly and out of sight. Friends described her as disappearing, then returning as if nothing had happened. Some chalked it up to a private personality. Others whispered about a second family. One insider told Page Six that Meghan rarely spoke about those missing years, only saying her mother had been working things out. But what things? That silence remains a crack in Meghan's otherwise polished origin story. The DNA pause becomes even more haunting in this light. If Meghan's test revealed 43% Nigerian and Doria froze, what exactly was she remembering? Fans on TikTok replayed Meghan's podcast clip, isolating the pause, overlaying text that read, "Recognition or guilt?" It became a viral moment all over again, with millions viewing it not as a tender silence, but as a cover for something unsaid. And when paired with Georgina Lawton's eerily similar story, the pause seemed less like coincidence and more like a tell. Industry insiders are also asking sharper questions. Meghan's brand relies on relatability and authenticity, but sealed court files and mysterious DNA overlaps aren't good optics. One media lawyer speculated that if evidence of another sibling ever emerged, it could trigger a frenzy of lawsuits over privacy, defamation, and narrative control.
The tight-knit mother-daughter bond strengthened during this time, with Ragland providing a steady presence in the home she shared with Markle, Harry, and their 2 children, Archie and Lily.
If you've built a global brand on one origin story, the lawyer told a British tabloid, and that story shifts, every contract tied to it becomes shaky. But perhaps the most unsettling revelation is that Meghan's alleged double story isn't happening in isolation. Commentators pointed to a pattern in Hollywood where heritage and identity are increasingly monetized. From ancestry specials on TV to streaming docuseries, DNA is big business. And Meghan's 43% claim wasn't just personal, it was content. If it turns out that content was borrowed or incomplete, the fallout wouldn't just stain Meghan, it would cast doubt on the entire industry of identity-driven celebrity branding. The questions keep circling back. What was Doria hiding? Who else might be part of this family story? And if silence was her shield, how long before that silence finally breaks? By the time Meghan's Nigeria trip ended, the narrative had spiraled beyond her control. What was meant to be a celebration of heritage had turned into a cultural flashpoint, and the Duchess found herself at the center of relentless memes, viral hashtags, and late-night comedy segments. Clips of her speeches were remixed on TikTok, overlaid with Georgina Lawton's interview audio. Fans spliced their words together, pointing out identical rhythms and phrases. One viral post captioned it bluntly, "Two women. One story, which is real?" Another trending meme showed Meghan holding a phone with the caption, "DNA results not found." It wasn't just online snark, it was identity collapse playing out in real time. Mainstream media began to pile on. The Daily Mail published a timeline of Meghan's changing narratives, contrasting her Netflix voiceovers with past interviews. The Guardian, which had once covered Georgina Lawton's memoir with admiration, ran a piece revisiting her story, and readers filled the comments section with speculation about its eerie overlap with Meghan's. Commentators speculated on air whether Meghan had crossed the line from self-discovery into appropriation. When your brand is built on truth, one culture critic said on Sky News, even one borrowed detail can make the whole brand feel counterfeit. Meanwhile, royal insiders were said to be watching with quiet satisfaction. For years, Meghan had accused the monarchy of controlling her story, of silencing her truth. Now, the irony was brutal. Her own story was the one under fire. Reports suggested palace aides were instructed not to comment, allowing public doubt to do the work for them. And it worked. Polling by YouGov showed a dip in Meghan's favorability, especially among younger demographics who once formed her strongest base of support. But the sharpest blow came from Hollywood itself.
If she still wants to do yoga, but she can't, because if Meghan said, "I'm going out, you'll have to be here." So it must have, over the time, got very, very annoying for her.
A streaming insider told Variety that Meghan's authenticity crisis was becoming a boardroom topic. Studios, the source said, feared signing off on projects that might lean on contested identity claims. One comparison kept coming up: Elizabeth Holmes. Nobody wants another Theranos situation where everything looked glossy until the foundation crumbled, the insider warned. If Meghan's DNA story unraveled even a little, the financial ripple could reach into future documentaries, books, and brand deals. Fans weren't backing down either. Reddit threads with thousands of comments dissected the silence between Meghan and Doria, framing it as the pause heard round the world. On Twitter, users drew parallels to past scandals where public figures blurred the line between their truth and someone else's. Some compared Meghan to Rachel Dolezal, the American woman who falsely claimed black identity. Others, more cautiously, argued it was less deception and more desperation, a woman grasping for roots in the face of rejection. Either way, the debate was consuming the cultural conversation. By now, the scandal wasn't just about a DNA test or a hidden sibling, it had become something larger. A referendum on authenticity in the age of celebrity storytelling. And Meghan Markle, once the woman who reshaped the royal brand, was now the test case for how quickly a story can turn against its author. In the weeks after Meghan's return from Nigeria, the fallout only deepened. What began as whispers about a DNA coincidence had turned into a full-blown storm of cultural doubt. For Meghan, every move was now filtered through suspicion. Was she speaking her own truth or performing someone else's story? The line had blurred and the public wasn't letting it go. Tabloids reported that Netflix executives had quietly pressed pause on potential spin-off projects, waiting to see whether Meghan's brand would stabilize. A publishing source told The Times that memoir drafts tied to her heritage angle were being reassessed, worried that releasing them now might amplify criticism rather than silence it. Even friendly commentators began to hedge their support. As one podcast host put it, "If your story shifts this often, people stop believing any version of it." The ripple effect spread to the royal front as well. Palace sources told reporters that Harry was deeply frustrated by the renewed speculation, feeling it undermined his efforts to protect Meghan from the same media that once hounded his mother. Yet behind palace walls, the silence was strategic. As one commentator noted, "They don't need to attack Meghan. The public is doing it for them." But the most striking consequences came from the cultural conversation. Across social media, debates raged about the meaning of identity in an era when DNA tests, ancestry apps, and memoirs have turned heritage into a marketplace. Commentators asked, what happens when identity becomes brand currency? Fans pointed to Meghan as a cautionary tale, a celebrity who may have pushed her narrative too far, leaving questions she couldn't answer. Amid the speculation, one theme kept resurfacing: Doria Ragland's silence. That pause on the FaceTime call, replayed millions of times, remained the hinge of the story. Some said it was simply a mother overwhelmed with emotion. Others were convinced it was recognition of a truth never spoken aloud, the possibility of another child, another daughter, whose story had been left in the shadows. Until those sealed files are opened, until Doria herself speaks, the silence will always sound louder than the words. And that's what makes this scandal so potent. It's not just about Meghan, it's about how much the public craves authenticity in a world of curated narratives. If your story can't withstand the weight of scrutiny, the culture is quick to tear it apart. Meghan Markle has become the flashpoint for that truth. A duchess whose greatest battle isn't against the monarchy, but against the fragility of her own origin story. So where does it go from here? Will Meghan double down, release proof, and reclaim her narrative? Or will this story linger, a ghost that shadows her every project and appearance? One thing is certain, the silence around her past has become the loudest voice in the room. And if a single pause can trigger a cultural storm, imagine what happens when the next secret breaks. If Meghan's DNA revelation can ignite this level of chaos, what happens when the palace finally answers with their own truth? Don't miss it. Subscribe, hit like, and stay with us, because the next chapter in this royal identity saga is coming, and you'll want to be here first.